Hi, my name is Dain, and I'm Assistant Director for Law Career Development at Santa Clara University Law Career Services. Today we're going to talk about on-campus interviews and resume collect as it relates to our fall recruitment program. On-campus interviews, or OCIs as they are typically called, refer to pre-screen interviews that are typically 20 to 30 minutes in length and take place on the SCU campus. The resume collect component is very similar to OCIs in dates and information collection. However, resume collect employers will review information and contact you on their own timetable and most likely interview you at their location. Some important dates to remember for the fall recruitment program are June 18th, which is the employer review period. And what that means is on the June 18th date, you are able to access your OCI tab or your OCI interface in SCU Law Jobs, provided you've signed the MOU to access the OCI interface. The employer review period is typically 2 weeks in length, and it's really a time for you to look at the employers that are both attending OCIs and also the resume collect component, and you're beginning to make determinations on what materials you need to get together, and you're finding out about employer hiring criteria and what offices they're interviewing for, what class years they're selecting, just basic information in order for you to prepare your application. The application process for OCIs takes place, and resume collect, take place from July 2nd through July 20th. And July 20th, the deadline is 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So for those of you that will not be local or perhaps studying abroad over the summer, being aware of that time frame is very important. So far we have the dates of June 18th, employer review, July 2nd, OCI application, or what we commonly refer to as bidding, begins with the deadline being July 20th. Actual OCI interviews begin August 7th, and they will run through September 7th. So as stated before, in order to access the OCI and resume collect employers that will be participating in fall recruitment, you need to sign a memorandum of understanding with our office. Once that is done, you will be able to access your OCI interface or OCI tab in Simplicity or SCU Law Jobs on June 18th. If you have signed the form and your tab is not active on June 18th, please contact our office as soon as possible so that we can verify your information and get you active. Now I'd like to talk about some OCI lingo, as we call it, in order for you to get familiar with some of the language you will be reviewing and hearing and seeing over the next couple of months. So OCI, of course, refers to on-campus interviews. All on-campus interviews will be held at the Career Center at Benson Center, unless otherwise noted. And the actual makeup of an OCI employer or OCI employers or resume collect employers information has particular language associated with it. For example, when going into the OCI interface, you will see what are called two sessions. There will be the OCI session, which is the default session when you click into your OCI tab. And then to access the resume collect session, you will select a drop box at the top of the page, and then a new batch of employers will refresh, and those will be the resume collect employers. So two different sessions. When you access the list of employers at what we would call the line item screen, and you go into the review, or there's a little button called the review button, when you enter that, what you see is called an employer schedule. And this is very important for the OCI and resume collect process because it's basically the information you will need in order to place your application or your bid. It will have employer name, it will have contact information, again, offices interviewing for and class years, it will have documents needed to place the bid, and it will also have hiring criteria and any special information that they would like to receive as part of the application process. So you will hear the word schedule quite often throughout the OCI period, and it refers to basically the employer roster of information that you can access, and that is both for OCI and resume collect employers. Then you will hear the term bid or bidding throughout the OCI process and resume collect process as well. And the term bid or bidding refers to the application for the employer or the application process by which you would submit an OCI or a resume collect. Once bidding has ended on July 20th at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, There will be a closed period for about 3 to 4 days where our Law Career Services office submits all of the applications and resume books to both Resume Collect and OCI employers to review. At that time, we encourage students to begin to actively check their OCI interface quite regularly, as employers will begin to make their selections, their candidate selections to interview pretty much within 24 to 48 hours within receiving that information. If you have any questions about that time period, please contact Law Career Services and we will be happy to guide you through that process. Once bidding has closed, you will notice in your OCI interface that your interview status column will change slightly. You will begin to see new verbiage called pending, invited, not invited, and alternate. And what those mean, it depends on what the employer has selected in the time frame. So for example, if an employer is still making a decision for their candidates, your invitation status may hover at pending for anywhere from 1 to up to 3 weeks or more, depending on when the employer is coming to campus. If you are invited to interview, that will be reflected in your interview status column, and it will say invited, accept or deny, and if you accept the interview, you will be automatically routed to the scheduler in order to schedule your OCI interview on campus. For Resume Collect, it's a little bit different in that you will not have an interview status column. The employer will contact you on their own time frame, and they will make selections and invite you to come to campus if they are interested in interviewing you as a candidate. Once bidding has ended and employers begin to make their decisions for their candidate selections to interview, you will notice in your interview status column for the OCI interface that the verbiage will either read pending, invited, not invited, or alternate. What these different terms mean are invited, of course, as you've been invited to a pre-screen interview on campus, and if you decide that you would like to accept that interview, you will see under your invitation 2 buttons, accept or deny. If you accept the interview, you will be automatically routed to the scheduler, and most of the time, depending on when the interviews are structured in the time frame, will be in 20, 25, or 30-minute increments, and they will be structured throughout the day. Unfortunately, it is first come, first serve with the interview times, so if you know you have obligations in the afternoon and you have to schedule in the morning, or the other way around, it's extremely important to check the Simplicity system regularly during the selection process. Again, we highly recommend that after bidding closes on July 20th, that within probably a 24 to 48 hour window, you begin to check your OCI interface at least 2 to 3 times a day. You should be notified through Simplicity if you've been invited to interview, but we like you to check just as a precaution. If you have not been invited to interview, your interview status column will say not invited. If you are selected as an alternate, that means that an employer has ranked you as either a first, second, or third choice alternate. If an alternate spot becomes available, the Law Career Services office will notify you, but typically the window is going to be very short, within a 24 to 48 hour period. We always hope for a longer window, but given the fact that alternate slots are usually become available if a student either denies an interview or for whatever reason an extra space becomes available, that's when we would contact the student according to their alternate rank. Now I'm going to go over some logistics that will help your transition through on-campus interviews and the Resume Collect process hopefully easier. The most important tip that we could give you at LCS is to make sure your SCU Law Jobs account is up to date and accurate. Most importantly for the fall recruitment process, that would mean making sure your class year is up to date, whether you're a second or third or fourth year student, full-time, part-time. If you are now a JD MBA or transitioning into the JD MBA program, that's reflected, or if you are a part-time student transitioning to the full-time program or vice versa. The information that you see or that you view for the on-campus interview and Resume Collect process is directly related to your class year. So making sure that information is up to date and current is extremely important. The other piece of information that I would recommend is that you update your current phone number. The phone number that we could reach you in the event something has changed with your interview, or for whatever reason we need to contact you on short notice. Many students ask, why should I participate in OCI? And the answer that we always give at LCS is, why not? It's a great way to introduce you to employers in the legal community. It's an exercise in the application process, and hopefully an exercise in the interview process as well. A lot of times students think that they cannot participate in OCI or Resume Collect unless they're in the top 5 or 10%. And the reality is that's not the case. Employers are increasingly more interested in what we would consider a well-rounded candidate, where GPA is considered. Things like leadership and practical experience are also considered. For more information about the OCI and Resume Collect process, you can either make an advising appointment with Law Career Services, where we can talk more in depth about either the application process, the interview process, or just overall preparation. And you can also access more information on the Law Career Services website. Under current students, there is information for OCIs and Resume Collect, including the slideshow, a timetable, and previous year's employers.